Okay, go ahead, Vishal.
Okay. Now we are moving to the next part, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Boni Zare, Professor of Sociology and Women and Gender Studies at Virginia Tech. Her work focuses on social justice, equality, and community engagement. We are honored to have her with us for today's online Vihara session. Dr. Boni, Jai Bhim, welcome and thank you. We kindly invite you to begin your talk on the topic caste and higher education, transition and timelines. And you will have 45 minutes for your presentation, including the questions and answer session. Over to you, Dr. Boni.
Thank you so much. Happy Father's Day to everyone. Jai Bhim. Thank you for the beautiful story that we heard. And congratulations to the folks in Garland, Texas. That's very exciting. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides, I believe, if I can.
Yes, yes, you can share it.
Okay, let's see.
Yes, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to start the show here. Uh, Give me 1 second here. Okay. Whenever we speak not alone, but with others. I think that you'd all agree that both the Buddha and Ambedkar would agree with that. I am, so let me get myself over here. As this slide shows you, I am speaking as part of a group. We formed a caste reading group in the middle of COVID.
Dr.
You see
Boni,
my,
your voice is too low. Is it possible to increase your volume little bit, audio?
sure.
It is coming
Hopefully you
from
can
the
hear.
long distance, so
Yeah, yeah.
we are
Can you
not
hear me
able to
now?
hear it. Little bit will be louder, will be better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Other members, please confirm if you guys can
Yes.
hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is good.
Yes,
That is
yes.
good.
Good,
This is
good. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. Um, so you see here Harshali Nagrale on my left, who is at the University of Bristol right now and comes from Maharashtra. Behind me is my colleague Gaurav Patania, who teaches in Virginia at Eastern Mennonite University. And to my right is Shah Shahjahan. And we were also joined by Sai Sital, who is in Delhi. These are the folks who have helped me as I've been on this journey of learning about caste. I want you to notice the third bullet point here. As a white American of great privilege, I want to acknowledge that I am not a part of the space of people experiencing caste prejudice. What I add to any kind of research is leveraging my privileges to approach sensitive topics and have people engage with me because they know that I don't know everything. And given that, they might say things that will be more revealing than otherwise because they're trying to teach me. So I'm going to tell you about two projects. The first has to do with university students. We ran two different kinds of workshops. What is caste privilege in the United States with folks of Indian heritage at a Division I college campus? And we asked them, what do you already know about caste? What do you think about how caste dynamics work in a place like America? And also, how do you think caste will evolve in the future? So that was one project. I'm going to talk about the second one in this sort of category today, which is the publication To Resist First We Must See. We ran these workshops at central universities in India, again, talking about caste privileges amongst university students who were from castes that were very privileged. So mostly dominant caste students coming to these workshops, and our understanding from them that they really rarely had a chance to speak about the influence and impact of caste in their academic lives or in their social lives. Um, and I just want to show that cartoon there for a moment. So when we think about somebody at a university campus, we can think about how they're protected from weather or rain by various components that they bring in their identity. Could be their gender, their class, their color, their religion, their caste, or even their region. Because of course, if you're going to university at a place that is also your regional home, you are going to feel more comfortable. And obviously, if some of these things are not matching, then you might be more out in the rain. And so hence this cartoon or sort of drawing that we made to illustrate that, the importance of thinking about that as we try to offer university spaces as spaces where everybody can learn and grow and expand their thinking. So our research questions for this project were how do dominant caste students from non-social science disciplines, who have generally not studied caste formally, perceive caste to operate in social interactions on campus? How open are they to learning about hidden or invisible privilege? Might they start to see how merit, or the idea of talent, is a socially constructed category, falsely assumed to be held by dominant caste learners automatically or naturally, if you will? And in terms of theory, we were basing ourselves on social identity theory, which helps to explain how young people at university engage in a process of solidifying their identities, both to themselves and others. So basically, again, we never do things alone. When we start to shore up or kind of manage our identity consciously or unconsciously, we are often doing that based on group influence. And as we decide personally for ourselves, oh, this aspect of my identity is important, right, almost simultaneously, that is getting reinforced and examined and solidified by other people saying the same thing, like you belong here or you don't belong here. What are the themes we found in our work? From talking to these students in India, we learned there is a strong association of caste with a particular and specific government policy, reservations. I know that doesn't surprise anybody on this call, but it's fascinating to me that we did not run these 3-hour workshops in order to talk about reservations. We ourselves did not bring it up. We were constantly having to help people not just talk about reservations. So that's an interesting finding in its own right, that the word caste almost immediately is synonymous or somehow similar in people's mind to a specific government policy when it is such a broader topic than that. Unfortunately, most upper caste students saw this policy in a somewhat negative light. And so, again, wanting to steer away from arguments about a very particular policy and get them to think much more broadly about why we are still talking about caste in 2026. Also, students see caste as upheld above all else by their communities and families' high concern with reputation. Okay, so family reputation is partly what's keeping young people from casting off caste. They feel bound by the rules, and the rules are to uphold your family's pride. And that becomes intertwined with uphold your caste, even though that's not the phrase their parents or their grandparents are using. And finally, no matter their personal ideas about intercaste marriage in terms of being very open to it, young people were consistently feeling pressured to stay with their parents' expectations or grandparents' expectations about entering into a same caste marriage. And this took the form of people saying things like, oh, I would be open to it, but my parents say I have to find someone who I'm similar to, or my grandparents say that you have to be compatible and have harmony in marriage, and so I have to find someone who's harmonious. So these are the kinds of values that are used to cover over the idea that people from any background might make a great marriage partner. I thought that you might be interested in what we actually did during these workshops. So I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about that. Of course, after we introduced ourselves and got their consent to be at a workshop, we told a story from the Panchatantra. It's not that different from the story that we heard today. A little story like that with a moral. And in the story, it illustrated gender privilege, and we used that as a bridge to caste privilege. So we got students to see immediately, oh, I see the woman in the story is not doing so well compared to the man. And then we said, okay, so is it easier to talk about male privilege versus female privilege, yet than talking about, dominant caste privilege versus suppressed caste privilege? And there was some interesting commentary about how it's, depending on your circle of friends, it might be harder or easier to talk about even gender privilege. But yes, so that was sort of our transition in. And we used laminated cards, like little game cards with questions, to get them thinking about caste. And I'm about to show you an example of that. They talked about that in small pairs before they talked about it in the larger group, which gave them, I think, some feeling of freedom and openness. And then we did later on, after we talked a little bit more about caste, and again entertained their thoughts, often about reservations, which we were trying to explain was not the purpose of the workshop. Then we did something called a story circle, and this comes from African American civil rights organizing. Where you in a circle, you each have a turn to tell a story about your own sense of privilege or a time where you didn't recognize that you were discriminating against another person, and only now later you are thinking about the story again and realizing, oh, this is maybe where I made a bit of a mistake. And what's fascinating about this technique is that once the two leaders tell their own stories, and in my case, I told a story about sort of as a young child realizing, how the Black child in the classroom was not being treated the same way, and how my own thoughts had run along those lines before I could kind of realize that that's what was happening, is that I was thinking prejudicial thoughts about her. Once you start to open up in a vulnerable space like that, it helps people then share their own sense of, oh, I'm not always right, or I don't always say and do and behave in a very broad-minded, open-minded way. And so that's when we really started seeing university students able to admit and think through that they didn't always say sensitive things about caste or about people's background. And finally, as a wrap up, we talked about defining privilege, invisible privilege, and how to keep the conversation going on campus. And I say invisible privilege because often people who are privileged are the last persons to see their privilege, right? When they look in the mirror, they think, oh, I'm just an ordinary, regular person, not I'm a person with a lot of privileges, because mainstream society has set it up to hide those privileges. This is an example of a laminated card. Please answer each question one at a time. So this was just in these small groups. For instance, we asked, if anyone works in your home, what are these workers like? And what kinds of conversations do you think, do you have with them? And then how do you think they talk about you when you're not around? And it's asking people to think about the conversations that the mess hall or cafeteria workers were having about them when they're not there. That was kind of the eye opener for these university students, because I don't think they had really been asked to think about that before. How do you think they see you? So I just wanted to share that warm up with them. And I don't know that we have very much. I want to go on to my other topic, but I do have an example from the story circle of someone sharing a vulnerable story. I might get back to that in the question and answer, but I think I should probably go on to the second project. Um, so I want to mention my forthcoming book with co-edited by myself and Gaurav Patania, Caste in Time, Temporal Justice and Critical Caste Studies. We have 12 contributors on the subject of time and caste, and it's going to be one of the first volumes ever on that very subject. And a chapter that I'm contributing with my co-author, I'm about to tell you about. But first, I'll just say as a general idea that access to time and control over one's temporal experience is fundamentally shaped by social hierarchies. So if that's not something you've thought about before, I'm not surprised. You know, we tend to take both time and space for granted. We think, you know, the space around us is where we live, and the time that we have is what we wake up to each morning. So it's not something that we tend to think about very analytically necessarily, but it's a fascinating study, actually. And when we think about university students and their access to time, or maybe those of you who are on the call who are younger than that, thinking about your own access to, you know, your school day and homework time, right? Time really is kind of a controlling aspect over each day, right? So we asked students at a central university in India to share their story about moving. See, these are first generation learners from low caste backgrounds. We asked them to share their story about moving from the village time to university time. We talked with 20 graduate students, 14 men and 6 women, ages 22 to 33, and we had 60 to 90-minute interviews with them. Um, and I want to mention my co-author, that is Rasipogula Vinod Kumar. You'll see a picture of him later in this presentation. And let me pull up my notes here. So we asked graduate students to compare village time where daily rhythms are governed by natural cycles and survival tasks with campus time, where students' ability to use time well depends on making strong connections with their mentors and classmates. And one of us is a PhD student in sociology, that's Vinod Kumar, and he himself comes from a rural, Dalit, and low-income background. So what is village time? For all of these students in their life up to middle or high school, the day's clock was set by agricultural labor. The light in the sky meant it was time to start gathering fuel. Parents went to work in the fields, as did children when school was on break. And these first generation learners are aware of things like trying to get, you know, hold of kerosene to do your homework by, maybe standing outside the neighborhood's television and not necessarily being invited inside to watch TV, so watching it through the window. And so these are people who are coming from a place where time is set by the seasons and by nature. Once one of the students said, my mom didn't have a clock in the house at all. She actually woke up to the sounds of the chickens laying the eggs. That's when she knew, oh yes, I can hear it's time to get up for school. I was given the chance, says the student, but to live by the clock. Perhaps the next generation will not only own a clock as I do, but own a computer. A driving force for me is hoping one day my family will reach to that state where they will be having that kind of a dignified life. Although memories in the village had positive moments, these students did not yearn for the greater simplicity of the village. They were those hours, they said, were focused on getting food. And they said, when I'm home, I feel insecure. No one there can guide me about studies or jobs. Students quietly expressed sadness about villagers' lack of imagination or ability to go beyond what people have been saying for generations. It's as if life's instruction book has one page. So that's the first theme, is that in that first box, village time is reassuringly predictable, but also all too predictable. So these students were aware of the difference in timescapes They didn't have a lot of sentimentality about going back to village time, but at the same time, they had happy childhood memories of shared games and, the unity of the village. What we probably most strongly took from this research is that transitioning from one kind of time to another is a zigzag negotiation, or a crooked path, if you will, and that can be very difficult. And that the university is not doing enough to help these students in terms of orienting them to moving from one kind of time to another. And the other theme is the influential roles that people play: their parents, their supervisors, their friends, and then something we called that one. These PhD students from village backgrounds said there was always, it's interesting, there was always one person, right, who truly motivated them. Maybe it was somebody who was an older person coming back to the village who had actually gone to university and could tell them about it. Maybe it was somebody's older brother who was starting at a university. Maybe it was one teacher, either at the college level or at the local school, that had really inspired them. But that was a crucial part of why they could leave the village and pursue an ambitious goal. So I'm going to now just mention that girls may have a longer timeline to gaining authority as PhD students than boys do. Girls are more likely to be raised to refrain from speaking. One student said with emotion, "As girls in the village, we were asked to confine ourselves to the four walls of the home, and not even to have group conversations with passers-by. How then do we know how to speak to strangers?" And so students talked about how their preparation for coursework differed from their dominant caste peers. They said, if they study for 1 hour, I need to study for 5. People talked about material needs, needing to find a computer. Some people were loaned computers. Other people did all their computer work in the library, which is very restrictive because the library is only open certain periods of the day. And think about all the times you have to save the file and then take it on your pen drive back home with you. So it's much less convenient. It's less safe for women to be walking, or they don't feel as comfortable walking home from the library late at night. These sorts of things. And also, many people sort of juggle paid work with their university work. Now, they come in on scholarships, sure. They get some funding, sure, but it's still hard to survive. Students may have to return and help with planting or harvest between their terms. So if they're physically taxing themselves while their dominant caste peers come back talking about holidays. To help their siblings afford school uniforms and supplies, many students juggle their coursework with extra jobs such as becoming a part-time teacher or private tutor. And I wanted to share one student's story of remembering how when they went to college, so this is before they got their PhD, they were also working as a person who cleared the table at the local restaurant. And take a look at what they say. This is a rather long quote or story, but I think it's worth sharing with you. I used to go to college, and afternoons I used to work at a restaurant in a cleaner. And it used to be very hard at my heart, ma'am, because I'm having a good percentage in all subjects, and I'm passing. And I feel myself very much confident. I feel something, a different version of me, that I'm transforming in my life, that I'm going ahead so I can see the future. I'm ahead of all the students, irrespective of everything. Because despite coming from this caste and this burden, I'm still struggling and fighting ahead of everyone else in the class. So that feels like a kind of strength to me. But at the very moment when I complete the college afternoon, when I go to the restaurant, again, my old dress is changed to the table cleaner's uniform. Those old clothes, like a worker, says I'm like an illiterate, a man who has nothing. And my whole identity changes, ma'am. Like suddenly my whole confidence, my esteem, everything is gone. What I had thought and what I'm doing. So those kinds of things made me really troublesome. I used to go to washrooms and cry a lot, very hard. Like, why am I in this life? Yeah, at this young age, 18. So this student, same student, went on to score 93% on the Master's in Public Health admission exam, and he received a very selective scholarship. And while gratified or happy by this achievement, remembering the degrading looks he received as a table cleaner still gave him sharp pain. The isolation he felt while crying in the washroom still disturbed him. So the educational system needs to counterbalance this by an asset-based, affirming account of his rise as a rural person and now scholar. And that's what's not happening enough. So I just want to mention, I guess, a couple more things. There are supervisors who are supportive. There are supervisors who are tolerant. There are supervisors who are unfortunately giving their students from lower caste backgrounds extra jobs to do that are not appropriate. They're asking them to pick up their children after school. They're telling them to go to their house and to do maybe some cleaning. They're asking these students for favors, and they're not asking their dominant caste graduate students for these same tasks to be completed. I mentioned that because I think it's concerning, and I think, again, it shows that the university is not doing a good job of explaining what the boundaries are and how they should not be crossed. Because remember, it's not just that these students are unfairly being asked to do something extra. It's also that it impacts their identity as a scholar. They think to themselves, but I'm a scholar, so why am I picking up your children? That gets in the way of them thinking about themselves as a future scholar. The other thing I want to mention before concluding my part of the talk and answering your questions is I want to mention that students going home thought of their time as also kind of marriage dodging time. So when they went home and vacations, sometimes their parents, even though they were very supportive of their children getting a higher education, a PhD, and they're very proud of their children, of course, they still might feel insecure. Not just when am I going to have grandchildren, or when is my family going to grow, but also insecure because they know that a guaranteed job is not necessarily there. And so they go back to their old ways of thinking, well, marriage, at least I know that you are settled. I know that I've done good in this life because I see that my son or daughter is getting married and moving on with their life. So that means that I also am successful. And so that students would describe them as saying always, the studies come before marriage, the studies come before marriage. But that was also, that took time and that took energy for them. So I think that's an important thing we have to think about. I wish that more of the university students that I spoke with who are from dominant castes would see the realities about caste, realities that are expressed from, for instance, this diagram from the India and Me Cafe, which is a United Kingdom initiative. Notice, how this diagram shows proportionally, more clearly, how the Indian population breaks down, and also shows that access and ownership of resources, including university education, is completely opposite to the proportion of the population. This is my co-author, and as I mention the conclusions of this research, which I will read out in just a moment, I do want to say that research is valuable for documenting what needs to change, but it also builds relationship and stretches us to be the fullest humans we can be. There's so much that goes into researching and interviewing people than can be contained in any talk that I give you. And it's forming friendships that also are one of the most exciting and wonderful privileges of this work. So just to finish up, I just want to say universities have to give much more realistic educational resources for these students. which includes English language refinement, giving them more preparation about getting adjusted to university life, body language, and helping them talk to their professors and talk to their peers who are from dominant caste backgrounds and have different body language. University policy should be reviewed and enforced so that professors who request non academic tasks will receive warnings and penalties. And finally, as with the case of the library hours, there need to be improvements in university life so that the most vulnerable students will feel welcome and that they belong. Thank you so much for listening to this, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Vishal, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Boni, for the insightful session. Now I request members to ask questions. Please raise your hand or type your questions in the chat box.
Yeah, Redaji, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mahesh. My name is Roy Mantina. Maybe I'll turn on my video so I can. So, I have a quick question. It's a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much for studying the subject which is most neglected subject. So, as a third person, you studied this subject, okay? Most of the individuals in this call are, we somewhere or other way experienced this caste. Some good memories, some bad memories. So for the young population, like for example, my son's born here, both of them, okay?
Mhm.
American citizens. But they also have a caste, they're Dalits. Okay, if were to born in India, they're by birth Dalits, okay? But even though they're born in America, the soil, foreign soil, just because they're my sons, they're Dalits, okay? So people, we are all kind of same age group. We know how to live that life with pain. We gone through it. We matured it. Sometimes we feel bad. But that generation, how they overcome that battle. For example, my younger son, quickly I'll finish up, Boston University. I used to encourage him, mingle with other students of Indian origin, different castes. And I used to try very hard, participate in all Hindu festivals. We go to church, but he tried very hard. Someday I asked him, put him on the spot, did you attend Diwali? Dad, I did. I did. Then I said, like, why you're frustrating? Dad, do you think you have a problem with their fathers? And your father had a problem with their grandfathers? Dad, these kids are worse than their fathers and their grandfathers. I had no words. How that generation handled that past, which has been brought to the foreign soil. Just give some wisdom, please. Thank you.
Wow, wow, thank you for that. Um, I'm thinking about how that relates to the workshop that we did on a American campus. And I'm really sorry that your son experienced that and says that he meets people who are carrying out caste in ways that are so strong they make him think that it's worse here. Yeah. Um, we do know that part of what happens is that immigrant families not only carry caste with them to their new country, but they often carry and cling to tradition. Um, and that tradition could mean something as maybe, sort of specific as Bharatnatyam dancing, dance lessons, but it also could mean that they don't have any reflection on their expectations about who it's important to be friends with or boyfriend and girlfriend with, if that's the case. And I think, I guess maybe I want to invite some other voices on that question because it's such an important one. But I will just give a tentative answer that it takes a lot of courage to say, I am Indian and you are Indian, and we should focus on our sameness and we should celebrate the diversity that we bring to an occasion like Diwali rather than think there's only one version of things. That's the key point, isn't it? There's not a version in which good conquers evil and good is Brahminical, right?
Very good question, Redas. Thank you for asking. Is there any more questions from any members from this group? Please go ahead. I think, Boni, that the question that raised, I think we need to bring that one in the curriculum also, because the generation to come, and that's what they are going to face, and they may not like us, kind of. I mean, our kids are growing here, and if they are facing the same thing, then what is the purpose of the American dreams here? Right? Everybody talking about the American dreams, California dream, Texas dream. If they face the same thing, then there is no American dream. Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Redas. Any follow up, Redas, if you can. Otherwise, we can go to the next one. Vivek, please go.
It's kind of the challenge I throw to the parents here, to the scholars, how we feel the confidence in these boys and girls, because they are going to retreat, they're going to step back, they're not going to engage in the mainstream because of profiling, because of isolation. They go lunch together, those groups. They have a separate WhatsApp groups, and these kids are not included there. There is no thing, oh, you're a Dalit. They don't say it, but there is an unconscious bias that you are not included in their WhatsApp groups, in their lunch, in their volleyball, basketball dribbling, together. So how we dribble, our generation, we know the pain exactly. But how we prepare our generation to live with dignity in saying that, I'm a Dalit, but I'm an American citizen. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Boni, any add to it, or we can go to the next question?
Right.
Vivek, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah,
other questions?
yeah. Thank you, Bonnie. And I have a question regarding. I know you have done this research, and I believe you have the findings as well. How do you implement this research findings to annihilate the castes, or to put a curb on the caste discrimination? The university that you are at.
Thank you for your question, Vivek. Before I answer it, I do want to return to the previous speaker's question just for a moment. I don't know if this is helpful, but I wonder if the young people would want to know this story. In a workshop with 4 international graduate students who were from India, had only been there in America for 1 to 2 years, and several second, third generation young women who were, absolutely as American as can be, I found completely opposite views amongst the American young women about caste. These are all Indians. These are all people who have been exposed or underexposed to caste. But one woman said, I was raised to be Brahmin. I have been told all my life that being Brahmin is somehow special. I don't really think it should be taught to me that way. I'm questioning it right now as a 19-year-old, but I am very aware that my parents have very strong, and my grandparents and relatives all have very strong feelings about this, and I'm kind of here to try to figure out what it is. And another woman at the table who did not tell me her caste, but she said, I was raised that there is no such thing as caste in America. The most important thing is to not bring any Indian food in your American lunchbox, because they will think of you as different and smelling like spices. And it's very important not to talk about India ever. Like, don't talk about India at all. You can talk about India every now and then, but the most important thing is to blend into white America. So, I mean, right there in the room, there were two very different reactions and understandings of what it means to be Indian in America. And I think if young people had the courage to say something like that there isn't any one version, that can be helpful, because at least it might open new conversations. But it also shouldn't be the burden of those folks who are receiving a feeling of exclusion to have to say anything, of course. So I just wanted to share that story. As for, and I would say the primary thing that people, said from America was that they didn't know that much about caste and that they were pretty ignorant. That doesn't mean they couldn't have been unaware of sometimes making maybe assumptions about people, but the people who were not taught I am a Brahmin were much more just like, we just don't talk about caste much at all, except for my uncle who, talks about reservations or something like that, So it was just sort of interesting. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more feedback on that. As for your question, Vivek, okay, so I just want to say two things. I have tried hard with other folks on my campus to get my university to add caste to their non-discrimination clause. Okay. It should be a protected category. It is not enough to say race. It is not enough to say ancestry. We know that it can only have good legal teeth to it if we specifically add the word caste. This effort was pushed through after COVID, but then when Trump came into office, the DEI conversation stopped with a halt, and people said it isn't the right timing, it seems, for you to be bringing this up. It isn't very realistic when we're struggling to hang on to our resources that are going to helping, say, African American students feel belonging on campus. Now, that is not to pit race against caste. That is not that I agree with that response. I just want to explain that we do not do this work in isolation. We do not do this work simply to publish a paper on it and hope that somebody reads it. We do this work to try to change mindsets, and the policy implications on the American campus, one of the first and most important steps is to do as Brandeis did, as the state university system of California has done, and add caste to the non-discrimination clause. Of course, in India, there's much work to be done, and I don't have any, power or say or control over that, but that would be a whole other conversation. But yes, it's incredibly important for us to be scholar activists and not simply to be scholars sitting in a dusty library.
Yeah, thank you for your response. I know it is a long battle for you as well to present this case, to your, body and implement it. Definitely, we understand this point. However, these issues still very prevalent in the community, and people are literally being affected back in India. And since the Indians have migrated all around the world, they're also bringing their caste with it, and they're practicing it, because we see this in these have been witnessed throughout in the United States, and maybe in other part of the country as well, other part of the world rather. And the question I have, another question is to, how do we change the mindset of the young generations? You are in the curriculum, you are in academia, and to your student, how would you put this, the humanity is greater than the subsections of our divisions of the people, like the caste or the race. How do you inculcate this understanding in the minds of these young people?
I've experienced it in two different ways in my own classroom, so perhaps I'm going to answer you that way. So I'll tell two quick stories. One, I'm talking and introducing the idea of caste in a global feminism classroom, and a student who is from a high caste background interrupts me and says, "I'm afraid you're inaccurate. This is what's going on in India instead. Things have gotten much better. Here's all the ways I can tell you they've gotten much better." Yeah. And they go on for a little while. And then I have to say, I have to do what I hate to do, which is pull the hierarchy, pull rank, right? And I just say, "I'm sorry, I understand that's what you think is happening. That is what you have been told, or you maybe have been shown, even in India on a very selected tour of certain areas where look at how things are improving. That's great. I'm not saying there's no improvement, but I have to respectfully disagree." So that's one scenario. In another scenario, I got students, although I could see that some students of Indian background were pretty uncomfortable with what I was saying about caste, the conversation became very lively and animated because it was paired with race. And so that can be a very helpful way to, I think, negotiate the awkwardness that comes from all of the hurt and misunderstandings and false ideas about it, because people do have a pretty strong, solid sense that yes, race has been a factor in how people can improve their future and their lives in America. And if you can get them to see that and then say, okay, they may not know everything about what's going on with caste in either India or America, there's a bridge there that they can start to at least debate or consider or think through. And it's not about finger pointing. It's not about blame. That's what's so important, is to get away from, we're going to play some kind of, thing where we're talking about who should feel guilty right now. No, that's not the point. The point is to think about justice and equality and how the luck of who you happen to be born to has given you such a head start in the race. That's what you want to try to get people to acknowledge, that you're not calling them not smart. You're saying their smarts were combined with luck and privilege in order to greater leverage those smarts. Hope that answers at least a little bit of what you're looking for.
I know it is a long discussion on the issues, like when you are trying to convince the new audience, like the Indians particularly, when they are born with it, right, and they are ingrained in their every single part of the body, and it's pretty difficult to remove from the mindsets, that the caste is a reality, right, and this is a way of discriminations. They do express, when it happens to them in the USA as a part of a race, right? Because, they say the whites are discriminating us at the workplaces, example. But they don't understand the same dimension about, they are the one who are perpetrator of discriminations back home. They're not taking that way, so until, the fire comes to their home,
Yeah.
they don't realize it, how significant and important that what the Bahujans in India speak about it, about the caste, and the moment you bring the caste in the USA, they feel very uneasy about it, So like it's a double standard, and they want to maintain the status quo. So I don't know, you might have come across again many factors when you are meeting with the people back home in India as well, since you went there for your studies, getting the research and all the things done. Um, So yeah, but very good. I think I congratulate you for
Yeah,
doing the work, and yeah, thank you.
yeah. Anil, please go ahead next. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Boni, for wonderful presentation and talk and the efforts in recognizing caste as a protected category. I have a comment and a question. The opposition that comes for delaying or deferring inclusion of a caste as a protected category, does it come from the Indian diaspora in the faculty? That's one question, because that's what our experience bears. Second, is there any collaboration with other professors who have had similar battles? Like in a Emory University, Professor Harshita Kamath was who teaches caste and was successful in implementing caste as a protected category. Is there a collaboration amongst the various faculties across universities?
Mm. Yes, thank you for your questions. Yes, there is a collaboration. We're in touch with Dr. Larry Simon of Brandeis University. Brandeis was, for instance, the first university to have this as part of their non-discrimination clause. And when you walk into the Brandeis Library, you see a bust of Ambedkar immediately. I just want you to know that in case that was not something known to you. That's outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I am happy to report that we do have a network. That doesn't mean that we are able to get this through university channels easily. Our network is based on the yearly conference or the every couple of years conference, the Unfinished Legacy of B.R. Ambedkar, which takes place in the United States. It is also based on the network created by the Brandeis Scholarly Journal, CAST, a global journal of social exclusion. So that's the CAST journal in our field. I think there's two battles. The first battle is getting people to understand what caste is. And by that, I mean a lot of white people in power, quite honestly. So that's the first battle, is just kind of getting people to understand why this is important and how it is happening and how we can't be passive and wait for bad things to happen before we understand this is a problem. Yes, bad things are happening, but I guess the response comes, well, I haven't really heard this happening on my campus, so why should I do anything about it? So that's I think the number one thing that I have come across. Number two then would be, yes, having, for instance, one of the ways that the state system in California was able to pass this for their 22 college campuses was they had a cross-caste, cross-religious, cross-racial coalition of students fighting for this. Graduate students mainly, right? So students over the age of 22 who are more mature, more worldly, more understanding, more outwardly focused. That really helps a lot too. My campus is pretty dominated by undergraduates. It's 18 to 22-year-olds. They're at a developmental stage in life that they're still kind of figuring it all out and recognizing injustice. That's why I think it's a little more difficult, for instance, at my university.
Yeah, one question was the opposition that is coming for deferring caste inclusion of caste in the protected category. Does it come from the Indian faculty members?
My understanding in terms of what I've seen in local areas is no. I'm not saying that they would be necessarily in favor of it, but I have not seen that specific obstruction.
Oh, thank you for at least that's a positive
Yeah.
light in some sense, because
Yeah.
they are the first kind of, oh, caste just doesn't exist. Why are we talking about caste, and those kind of discussions they want to get into. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Any other member? So Boni, from my side, one quick question that, as you know, that there are very, active Ambedkarite presence in the United States. There is a Ambedkar Association North America there, Ambedkar International Center there, Ambedkar International Mission there. So these organizations are also doing the similar work. So the collaboration that we are looking for. So how we can collaborate in the better sense. I mean, as Redas also mentioned that we do have the experience. We experience the caste in India. We know the practical thing what is happening, and also we are experiencing now. So how we can collaborate like that collaboration, community collaboration? How it is possible?
Oh, well, thank you for that question. I think I would defer to some of my colleagues in how to best answer that. So I'll pose that question to, for instance, Gaurav Patania, and I'll come back to you with a more concrete suggestion. But in the meantime, the first thing that comes to mind is that there's so many wonderful people on this call who probably have so many interesting stories to tell. And I recognize that my students would really benefit from that. So perhaps there could be a way I could be in touch and we could organize some kind of small session where we could have some of you speak on Zoom to
Yeah,
my students.
correct. That will be great. That will be great if you get the opportunity.
Yeah,
And we spoke to many places and we told our story.
yeah,
And we also told other people's story because sometimes other members doesn't want to come up front.
sure.
So we can tell that story also. But thanks for that opportunity so that we
Yeah,
can connect offline. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's be in
Okay.
touch.
Any other last question? Because it's almost 12 o'clock and we do need to respect the time. We can take one more question from.
No, not a question, but big thanks, Bonnie, and it is in depth. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna.
My
No
pleasure.
problem. Only quick thing, one member was asking in the private chat, the research that you publish, is it available publicly?
Yes. Shall I just send you perhaps the PDFs and then that way you could distribute them?
That will be great. Or if you have the link somewhere else, it is listed in your website or the university website, then I can share it with the
Yeah.
members community.
Okay, let me, yeah, sorry that I'm not, I realize I should put it on my LinkedIn bio, but I don't know that it's there. So yes, I will do that and I will share the links with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Also,
Then it is good to refer.
yeah, exactly. I'll just mention that the very latest project, the one about the village time to university time, that's not yet available, but will be coming hopefully in the next, 6 months to a year. So that part not yet, but
Correct.
the other ones, yes.
That will be great. That will be great because there are a lot of people are there looking for the data,
Yeah,
and now everything is database. So if you
true.
get that information, it will help us out also.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks again for
So
the honor of speaking to you all.
no problem. It's always pleasure. And we shall over to you if you want to conclude the session. That will be great.
Okay, it is time to conclude our online Buddha Vihara session. I would like to thank Bhante for blessing us with the Dhamma talk, and thank you to the kids motivational story reader and Krantitai for conducting the kids session. And many thanks to our guest speaker, Dr. Boni, for the session. And thank you to all the participants who joined today. With this, we conclude today's online Buddha Vihara. Thank you. Namo Buddhaya. Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim. Thank you, everyone.